Okay, good morning. This is the first day of the Phillips Curve. So I finished working on this new sheet last night, and what we're going to be talking about today is how aggregate demand and supply, that graph itself, is going to be shown as a mirror or reflection on the Phillips Curve. Okay, so as you watched that Heimler intro video, the Phillips Curve was developed in 1958 by Bill Phillips, and he just showed, after studying a lot of data, that there was a down slope to the relationship between inflation and unemployment. So what we have to solve for in macro, though, is when we do aggregate supply and demand things, or look at how the economy is currently sitting, we have to show unemployment and inflation levels. And when we do that, what we're going to have to do is remember our beginning kind of, SIGXn and PIG. So remember, our determinants are shifters at aggregate demand, and you can pause this, of course, and that way you can fill this out with me as I go, but I did it ahead of time so you didn't have to watch me write horribly. So remember, things that shift aggregate demand. That'd be changes to consumption, gross private investment, government spending, and net exports. And when we do the mirror side, the Phillips curve over here, what we're going to have is an increase in aggregate demand is a movement on the short run Phillips curve. A decrease in aggregate demand will be a movement down and to the right on the short run Phillips curve. So just remember, AD leads to movement. Okay, so, and remember, a movement is when something goes, if something's on this line right here and it travels along that line, it stays on that curve or that line. So that's a movement. All right, a shift is when you make a whole new one. All right, so that's gonna be a movement. Supply changes are gonna make shifts to the short-run Phillips curve. But let's just stick with that to begin with. All right, so now, here's the other thing. Once we draw this up, there's going to be some stuff on here you won't have to add to your graphs, but hopefully it'll help. So let's look at our directions. I tried to copy kind of the idea or the format of an FRQ. Draw the aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph with an economy in long run equilibrium. Okay, so anytime I'm drawing, I want to kind of highlight what I want to do. So long run equilibrium. I know I'm going to need my long run aggregate supply. Then I'm going to have all three of these crossing. That way I know it's in equilibrium. And it's called full employment equilibrium. It doesn't have a recession. It doesn't have inflation. It's a good economy. It's happy. It's healthy. Okay. Price level, GDPR, Y with an F for full employment, and current price level. Okay. So remember, all three of these crossing right here, that's going to be called equilibrium. That's where all three cross, and it's a nice, happy, healthy economy. Now, in our scenario right here, we have an effect of a SIGXn increase. So something up here got better, like low interest rates and people borrowed, making investment go up. Okay, government spending, remember that's lower taxes. I'm sorry, that's just straight up government spending. So the government can lower taxes or increase its spending. Taxes go up here, because if I have low taxes, then I can go spend. That's G with the up arrow. All right, then net exports, of course. If we have a positive net export, that means we're making stuff and selling it to other countries. We're exporting, so that could be a positive. Okay. All right. Remember, that's X stands for exports. That M stands for imports. So take how much we sell, subtract how much we buy, and then you get your net. When it's positive, then AD is going up. And that could be removing trade barriers, stuff like that, but that's other stuff. All right, so now I see an increase on aggregate demand, and I need to label new price level as P1 and Y1. So aggregate demand is increasing, so that means I'm going to shift that to the right. So when I shift that to the right, my output is going to increase, which means my GDP is going to increase. So I have my arrow right there, and now where I have short run equilibrium, I'm going to have a new price level. So of all these things right here, this is what we want to concentrate on, is these two, price level and real GDP. Remember, that's GDP and if it's real, subtraction of inflation has happened. So if I'm making more GDP, in order to make GDP, I have to be at work. So I'm going to associate GDP with the unemployment rate. So look, this many people were working. Now if we're making more stuff, those same people are getting more hours, they're producing more, whatever. Because this demand going up, that means we're going to have businesses be busier. Okay, so let's think about GDP as unemployment. Now price level, let's think of that as inflation. So if prices are going up, we have inflation. Now what I want to do is hop over here and now think about a mirror. When I see things in a mirror, it's going to show a reflection and also show things. I'm not going to say backwards is kind of a interesting term for it. All right, so the Phillips curve. We have our long run Phillips curve. Okay, see, starting to look familiar. And then we're going to have inflation. We're going to have unemployment. We're going to have our short run Phillips curve. Now, our current level of prices is going to be that. And you'll see some people write IR for inflation rate or UR for unemployment rate. Okay, whatever they tell you to do or label it, just do it that way. I've used pi because I always think that pi makes me inflate, so that's how I remember inflation. And a lot of economists use that, and I'm not really sure why. All right, so now we have our short-run Phillips curve and long-run Phillips curve in equilibrium with labels for inflation, unemployment, and the natural rate of unemployment. So this natural rate of unemployment, NRU, or people will put UN. Okay, so remember the natural rate of unemployment is, by nature, we're going to have we're going to have frictional and structural unemployment. Okay, frictional plus structural. That is, people choose to quit their jobs. I guarantee someone quit their job this morning. And structural is when your job skills don't fit anymore. Add those together, and that equals the natural rate of unemployment. You're going to see a bunch of questions that's like, the actual unemployment rate is lower than or more than the natural rate. So if you want the actual, you just add cyclical. Because cyclical is going to be when we slow down, when people get laid off or have, job loss during a bad economy. Okay, so what we have now is mirror the shift aggregate demand curve as a movement along the SRPC. Label your new levels of inflation and unemployment. So right here we're at equilibrium. That means that happy, healthy economy, right? So if we have an increased aggregate demand, we'll have a movement up and to the left. So this is unemployment. Unemployment decreasing is this way, where we always decrease left and increase right. So if we're right here at that amount of employment, I know that I'm going to have to make a movement. And so what else happened over here? Price level went up. So I'm just going to pick a spot right there. We're not using numbers, so it doesn't really matter. And so if I just draw this graph right there, I get unemployment there and inflation there. So now I have taken this whole idea of GDP being unemployment rate, and this unemployment rate, GDP is going to increase. So something backwards would be, if GDP goes up and people are working, unemployment's going to go down. So now unemployment has decreased by this right here. See how it shifted over there? And this shows when people want stuff, prices go up, right? Like the $12,000 PS5s on eBay. Just insane. So I'm showing price level go up, which is inflation, and price level going up, which is inflation. So now we had an economy in equilibrium, and we have an increase in aggregate demand mirrored on to the short-run Phillips curve.